So you're building with PHPWeave. You already know it's fast, right? But is it secure? Look, making your app safe is every bit as critical as making it work. In the next few minutes, we're going to break down exactly how to lock down your application, turning security from this big, scary thing into a core part of your skill set.
Yeah, when you start hearing terms thrown around like XSS, SSRF, container hardening, it is easy to feel a little overwhelmed and just ask, okay, where do I even begin? The good news is we can make this way simpler with a really clear, layered approach.
The key is to just think in layers. It's a simple but super powerful model we'll use for this whole explainer. First, we secure your code. That's the application logic itself. Second, we protect your communications, how your app talks to the rest of the world. And third, we harden the container, the environment where your app actually lives. Code, communications, container. Let's break it down. So here's our roadmap. We'll start by building that security foundation, then we'll tackle our 3 layers one by one. Securing the code, the API calls, and the Docker environment. After that, we'll talk about the ultimate secure setup and wrap it all up with a go-live checklist that you can use immediately.
All right, let's build that foundation. We're going to start from the inside and work our way out, beginning with the code that you write every single day.
And that brings us right to our first layer, your code. This is your absolute first line of defense. And honestly, it's where all good security habits really begin.
Okay, this slide shows a perfect example of a really common mistake. On the left, you see user input getting passed directly to a file path. That is a classic path traversal vulnerability, and it could let an attacker access files they should never, ever see. The PHPWeave way over on the right is to hard-code the template path and only pass in the data. The framework is basically designed to guide you toward this much safer pattern.
These are the core principles you really want to bake into your brain. Always use prepared statements to prevent SQL injection. Always escape your output to block cross-site scripting or XSS. Keep secrets out of your code by using .env files. And the most important one, treat all user input as totally untrusted until you've validated and sanitized it.
Now for our second layer, communications. Your app doesn't live in a bubble, right? It makes API calls, it talks to other services. Let's take a look at how to secure those connections.
This visual makes the risks so obvious. On the left, a URL from a user is being used directly in an HTTP request. That is incredibly dangerous. The secure approach, on the right, is to validate that URL against a pre-approved allow list of domains. If it's not a service you explicitly trust, the request gets blocked. Simple as that.
So why does this matter so much? Because it prevents a nasty attack called server-side request forgery, or SSRF. This is where a hacker tricks your server into making requests for them, maybe to internal network resources that should be private, or to services you never intended to contact. That URL allow list is your best defense.
Finally, we get to the outermost layer, the container. Your secure code and communications need a secure home to run in, and that means hardening your Docker environment.
PHPWeave offers 2 Docker images, and the choice you make is critical for security. This table from the documentation compares the standard Debian-based image with the Alpine-based one. Just look at the differences in size, known vulnerabilities, and especially that attack surface. The recommendation is crystal clear.
And here's a really stark visualization of that difference. The Debian image is a hefty 450 megabytes, while the Alpine image is just a fraction of that. A smaller image means fewer packages, fewer libraries, and because of that, a much smaller attack surface for any potential threats.
And it all boils down to this one number. The Alpine image is roughly 70% smaller. I mean, think about that. It's a massive reduction in potential security risks right out of the box.
This is why the ultimate secure setup for a PHPWeave application is using the Alpine image. It is, without a doubt, the production standard for anyone who prioritizes security.
And here's just a quick look at the built-in advantages. You get that minimal attack surface. Security patches get released faster in the Alpine ecosystem, and this is crucial, the container runs as a non-root user, PHPWeave, so an attacker's privileges are seriously limited even if they do get in. Plus, it comes pre-configured to block web access to sensitive files.
Okay, we've covered the 3 layers. Now let's put it all together into an actionable checklist you can use right before you push that button and go to production.
Here's your go-live checklist. First, use Dockerfile Alpine. Second, run a vulnerability scanner, something like Trivy, on your final image to check for known issues. Third, and this is critical, make sure debug is set to 0 in production. For credentials, use a proper secrets management tool. It's a much safer way to handle them than .env files in production. And finally, always run your app behind a reverse proxy, which can handle your HTTPS encryption and add another great layer of security.
If you take only one thing away from this whole deployment section, let it be this direct quote from the official documentation. Use Dockerfile.alpine for maximum security. It's the single biggest step you can take to harden your production environment.
And that brings us to the end. You've secured your code, your communications, and your container. But security isn't a one-time task. It's a continuous process. So the real question is, now that your app is secured today, what's your plan to keep it that way tomorrow? Thanks for watching.